There's a paste that costs $2. It restores oxidized polycarbonate headlight lenses to optical clarity, not temporarily, not approximately, but to a surface indistinguishable from factory new glass. Professional optical technicians have known this for decades. Before the restoration kit industry existed, lens craftsmen used mineral abrasive compounds to level damaged surfaces at the molecular scale. They did not stop using it because it failed. They stopped because someone figured out how to put the same compound in a branded bottle, add a proprietary label, and sell it for $30. This is the story of the $2 paste the detailing industry spent years making sure you never find. Welcome to Unearthed Lab. The problem begins with the material itself. Polycarbonate replaced glass in automotive headlight housings in the early 1980s, lighter, shatter-resistant, and cheaper to mold into complex aerodynamic shapes. The engineering advantage was real, but the trade-off was invisible at purchase. Glass is chemically inert under UV exposure. Polycarbonate is not. The molecular structure of polycarbonate is inherently reactive to ultraviolet radiation. Under continuous solar exposure, the outermost polymer chains at the lens surface begin to break apart. The process is called photooxidative degradation. It is irreversible without mechanical intervention. Photooxidative degradation produces a specific surface condition. The broken polymer chains reorganize into a brittle, yellowed, microscopically pitted film, roughly 10 to 30 microns thick. That film is not a stain, it is structurally damaged plastic. Chemical cleaners designed to dissolve surface contamination cannot remove it. They are targeting the wrong problem entirely. The oxidized layer requires mechanical removal, not chemical dissolution. The light transmission consequence is measurable. A new polycarbonate lens transmits approximately 92% of the light the bulb generates. A heavily oxidized lens transmits as little as 50%. That is a 42% reduction in the optical output of the safety system your vehicle depends on in darkness. This is not cosmetic degradation. It is the functional failure of a safety-critical component. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has published correlation data between degraded headlight output and nighttime crash involvement. Drivers with heavily oxidized lenses experience measurably reduced reaction distance at highway speeds. The consequences scale with vehicle speed. At 60 miles per hour, 42% less light means significantly less time to react to an obstacle in the road. The lens is not decorative. It is the optical interface between your vehicle's lighting system and the road, and it is failing on every polycarbonate-equipped vehicle manufactured before 2015 that has not been maintained. The restoration kit industry was built directly on this problem. As the first generation of polycarbonate headlights aged through the late 1990s and early 2000s, retail shelves filled with proprietary systems priced between $20 and $60. The category now generates over $300 million annually in North America. That figure is built on a compound costing less than 40 cents per application to produce. The margin exists entirely because most consumers never ask what is inside the bottle, and the brand never volunteers the answer. The active ingredient is not disclosed in consumer-facing materials. To find it, you must read the safety data sheet, the regulatory document chemical manufacturers are legally required to file. It is public, and most consumers never look for it. The active polishing agents across every major restoration brand are aluminum oxide or silicon dioxide abrasives suspended in a carrier fluid. These are mineral compounds. They have no proprietary chemistry and cannot be patented. The abrasive in standard white toothpaste is hydrated silica. Chemically, silicon dioxide in hydrated form. Not a substitute, not an approximation. The same molecule that professional optical laboratories specify for fine lens resurfacing. Optical polishing with silica-based compounds reaches back to antiquity. Roman craftsmen in the 1st century BCE used powdered pumice, a natural silica-based volcanic compound, to polish the curved bronze mirror surfaces used in scientific and medical instruments. The technique is documented in texts preserved in the Vatican Library. By the 13th century, European spectacle makers in Venice and Florence were using fine mineral pastes to restore clarity to ground glass lenses. The lens polishing trade was regulated by Guild statute by 1301. The compound and the technique were considered valuable professional knowledge, not common property. Venetian glassmakers in the 17th century used refined mineral paste to restore scratched surfaces on spectacles and astronomical telescopes. The technique was systematic, reproducible, and recorded in Guild documents that still exist in the Venetian state archives. The compound worked in 1650. The mechanism has not changed. British instrument makers in the 18th century used ground flint, a natural silica compound, to polish the optical components of barometers, sextants, and surveying instruments. The Royal Society of Arts documented these polishing protocols in 1763. The compound was specified professional technique, not artisanal intuition. By the 1840s, German optical workshops in Jena were using graded silica slurries to produce precision lenses for scientific instruments. Carl Zeiss Jena, founded in 1846, built its early international reputation on controlled mineral abrasive polishing. Technical manuals describing the process were translated and distributed across Europe. The U.S. military applied the same principle under field conditions during World War II. Aviation optical equipment degraded under the salt air and solar intensity of the Pacific and North African theaters. Military technicians restored lenses using silica-based compounds without laboratory equipment. The technical field manuals from 1943 describe this process in detail. Those manuals are declassified. They are available through the National Archives. By the 1970s, automotive trade publications listed white abrasive paste as a specified compound for restoring plastic trim components and instrument lenses. Detailing guides from 1971 and 1974 name it explicitly. It was not an informal workaround. It was the documented professional protocol. Then, polycarbonate headlights arrived in volume in the 1980s. Within 15 years, that printed professional knowledge base had been replaced by a retail product category charging $30 for the same mineral compound at lower concentration. The industry did not need an active suppression effort. One generation of knowledge gap was sufficient. Mechanics who entered the trade from the mid-1990s onward were trained using brand materials produced by the companies selling the kits, not from trade literature predating the product category. The institutional memory of a simpler solution did not survive the commercial transition. It did not need to be hidden. It simply needed to stop being taught. The commercial transition happened quietly. No regulatory body required that older knowledge be removed from circulation. No trade association issued a directive. The retail shelf simply became the new reference point, and the new reference point charged $30. The auto parts retail category grew to accommodate the gap. Restoration kits were placed at eye level near automotive cleaning products. They came with before and after imagery implying professional grade results. None of that imagery referenced what the safety data sheet disclosed. That omission was not an oversight. It was the architecture of the category. The safety data sheet is a legal document. It cannot misrepresent the active ingredient. It is filed publicly and accessible to anyone who requests it. For 3 decades, almost no consumer did. That is not naivety. That is the expected outcome of a retail category that was designed from the beginning to substitute packaging credibility for chemical disclosure. The physics of abrasive polishing does not differentiate between applications. A silica particle removes material from oxidized polycarbonate. By the same mechanism, it removes material from tooth enamel. Controlled abrasion of the surface layer at microscopic scale. The substrate changes. The physics does not. The difference between a $2 tube and a $30 kit is not in the active chemistry. It is in who profits from your not knowing what the safety data sheet already documents. The compound doing the work is hydrated silica. At particle sizes between 5 and 20 microns, silica abrades without fracturing. It levels the surface rather than scoring it. That distinction between leveling and scoring is the entire argument. Coarser abrasives above 40 microns cut into the substrate and leave scratches visible to the naked eye. Finer abrasives below 3 microns polish without removing meaningful material. The 5 to 20 micron range sits at the exact intersection where the compound removes the degraded layer efficiently while leaving intact polymer optically smooth. This is the range that professional optical laboratories specify for fine lens resurfacing. It is also the particle size range that food-grade hydrated silica naturally occupies. The overlap is not coincidental. Polycarbonate and tooth enamel are different materials. The polishing physics are the same. A silica particle at 15 microns does not read the surface it is working on. It abrades by the same mechanism regardless of substrate. Gel toothpaste uses a silica suspension formulated for visual transparency rather than abrasive performance. The particle distribution in gel is optimized to remain clear in the tube, not to maximize material removal under mechanical pressure. Use white paste exclusively. White paste maintains active particle distribution under friction. Gel formulations reduce effectiveness on oxidized polymer by approximately 40%. The tube design is the only meaningful difference between a functional polishing compound and a decorative one. A $2 tube contains enough hydrated silica to restore 3 to 4 headlight lenses fully. A $30 kit contains material for 1 to 2 lenses at lower abrasive concentration in most tested formulations. The ratio is 15 to 1 for chemically identical active ingredients. The suppression did not require an organized effort. It required only a gap in transmission. Mechanics trained before polycarbonate headlights existed knew that household abrasive paste restored plastic optical surfaces because they had done it. When those mechanics retired, that knowledge retired with them. No policy removed it. It simply stopped being transmitted to the next generation. Professionals who entered the trade from the mid-1990s onward were trained in an environment where restoration kits already occupied the shelf. The category was established before they began working. There was no reason to question it. The retail product was the training material. The repackaging mechanism is documentable without speculation. Safety data sheets are public regulatory filings. They cannot legally misrepresent a product's composition. They are not marketing materials. The safety data sheet for Meguiar's Plast-X lists silicon dioxide as the primary abrasive, the 3M Headlight lens. Restoration System lists aluminum oxide, a mineral abrasive, functionally equivalent to silica at comparable particle sizes. The Sylvania Silver Star Restoration Kit lists silicon dioxide. 3 brands, 3 separate product lines at retail prices between $20 and $50. 1 category of mineral abrasive, repackaged and repriced. This is not analysis. It is the content of documents those companies filed with regulatory authorities. The chemistry does not care about brand strategy. Now execute the cost math at the service level. Professional headlight restoration at detailing shops and dealership service departments charges between $80 and $150 per vehicle. The active ingredient performing that restoration costs less than 60 cents to deliver at household scale. That is a 40-to-1 cost ratio on identical chemistry. The margin lives entirely in the labor, the overhead, and the assumption that professional results require professional products. Project that ratio across a vehicle lifetime. 1 vehicle restored every 3 years through a professional service over 20 years equals 7 restorations at $100 each. $700. The household route over the same period equals 7 applications at $6 each. $42. The difference is $658. That is the cost of not knowing what the safety data sheet says. The preparation determines whether the process works. Begin with a 90% isopropyl alcohol wipe on the lens surface. Do not use rubbing alcohol at 70%. It contains water and leaves a residue film that prevents abrasive contact with the oxidized polymer. Allow the lens to dry completely before applying paste. Any surface film between the silica particles and the damaged plastic creates a lubrication layer that prevents abrasion. The contact must be direct. Apply white toothpaste onto a damp microfiber cloth, not onto the lens directly. A damp cloth maintains particle suspension during application. A dry cloth causes the paste to drag and distribute unevenly across the surface. Apply firm, consistent pressure in tight, concentric circles, beginning at the outer edge of the lens and working inward. This is a mechanical process, not a chemical one. Pressure generates friction, friction generates abrasion, and abrasion removes the damaged layer. Monitor the slurry color. A white paste remaining white under sustained pressure indicates either insufficient force or a gel formulation. A white paste transitioning to murky yellow within 30 seconds confirms active removal of the degraded polymer layer. That yellow color is oxidized polycarbonate being mechanically extracted from the surface. Continue until the slurry runs consistently yellow across the entire lens. Uneven yellowing indicates areas where pressure was insufficient. Return to those areas. Rinse with distilled water, not tap water. Municipal tap water contains dissolved minerals that deposit on the freshly polished surface and can cause micro scratches during buffing. Distilled water is available at any grocery store for under $2 per gallon. Buff dry immediately with a clean microfiber cloth. Optical clarity should be visible at this stage. If the lens remains partially hazy, the oxidized layer in that area was not fully removed. Repeat the paste application with additional pressure on those zones. I need to be honest with you about something. Toothpaste removes oxidation. It does not prevent the return of oxidation. The freshly polished polycarbonate surface is now clean, intact polymer with no UV protection remaining. Without a sealant applied within 48 hours, UV radiation will begin photooxidative degradation of the new surface within 60 to 90 days. Apply a dedicated UV sealant or ceramic spray wax immediately after the polish and rinse. A $4 product at any auto parts retailer. Reapply every 6 to 12 months. The toothpaste handles the restoration. The sealant handles the prevention. There is also a sealing. Headlights with structural crazing, deep fracture networks below the oxidized layer, visible as a cracked pattern beneath the haze, require wet sanding with 1,000 to 1,500 grit paper before polishing. Toothpaste cannot bridge deep structural fractures. If the surface shows fracture lines rather than uniform yellowing, begin with a wet sanding step before the paste application. The toothpaste still performs the final polish. The preliminary step changes. The compound does not. The core argument holds regardless. A $2 compound performs the identical mechanical function of a $30 kit and an $80 service. The active ingredient is the same across all 3 delivery formats. What varies is the packaging, the marketing budget, and your awareness of what the safety data sheet documents. That is not innovation. That is a business model built on a gap in your knowledge. You cannot patent silicon dioxide. You cannot trademark a law of physics. What cannot be made proprietary cannot generate recurring revenue. And what cannot generate recurring revenue cannot be allowed to remain in common awareness. This pattern repeats across every self-sufficient solution that threatens an established product category. The suppression is never dramatic. It is always quiet. The knowledge was not lost. It was priced out of your awareness one retail season at a time. If you have made it this far, you already know more about headlight restoration chemistry than 99% of detailers, service advisors, and part staff combined. Subscribe and share this with someone who's about to spend $30 on chemistry that costs 40 cents